So I want to talk about a topic that's actually kind of outdated at this point in time. I meant to make a video talking about this several weeks ago when it was actually relevant, but I never got around to making it. But I figure why not do it now because there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to MetaZoo. And there was a lot of misinformation that was going on at the time, and a lot of people were picking sides based off of that misinformation. So I kind of just want to clear the air, get some of the facts out there, and kind of get my own personal opinions out there on the matter, for historical sake and everything else. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the whole Argos versus Bailey situation that happened when MetaZoo shut down. Essentially, we have two of the biggest faces of the company. Love them or hate these guys, they both played pivotal roles in the success of MetaZoo during its heyday. They really helped push and promote and market MetaZoo. On one hand, you have Argos Anonymous, who runs his website and his YouTube channel and does his live streams and stuff. And on the other hand, you have Bailey, right? He used to help run a lot of the events, used to do the tournaments and hand out the promo cards and stuff. And he also did his live Poke Auctions whatnot streams that Mike used to announce all the time in the Discord. These days, I think he goes by Kadora Collective or something. He's always changing his name. But regardless, both of these guys played a pivotal role. And unless you live under a rock, you know of these guys. If you're in the community, you've definitely heard of their names before, right? When MetaZoo shut down for whatever reason or another, I have a theory on why he did this, but Bailey started attacking Argos, essentially claiming that he was inside trading, that he knew MetaZoo was going to shut down, so therefore he was trying to sell his collection off before it actually hit the fan, and was trying to get as much money as he could, while still kind of promoting and pushing the game like he still believed in it. Now, obviously, Argos had to retaliate and started taking shots back at Bailey because he's not just going to sit there and let him attack him without defending himself. So I understand why he defended himself. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I do believe one person is more at fault than the other. And obviously, this is my own personal opinion, everything I'm saying in this video, but I will get into that a little bit later. Right now, I kind of just want to talk about my personal experiences with Argos and Bailey, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty after that. So my first experience with Argos came very early in my MetaZoo journey because I actually pre-ordered some Crypto Nation 1 booster boxes from Fetsa. It was this private TCG store owner who ran like a Patreon, was in the Discord very early on. I ordered some boxes and Argos was helping him out at the time, and he helped me out with an issue I had going on. So right off the bat, this guy was very helpful. He's always been in the up and up when it comes to, helping out the community, and that's how I've always seen it. You know what I mean? This guy would go on there and he would buy tons of those exclusive items. And if you ever missed out, you could always count on going to Argos and picking it up at cost. And I always respected him for this because everybody else would go on eBay and flip it for 3, 4, 5 times the price. And here's Argos selling it at cost. And sometimes you throw in extra goodies with it. So I always respect him for this because he was always there for the community. He cared about MetaZoo. He wanted the game to grow and he wanted to get product into people's hands. Unlike a lot of other greedy motherfuckers out there, right? So that's what I love about Argos. The only thing I didn't like about Argos was sometimes he would just be too positive, right? If there's anything negative to say about the game, he would never agree. He would never actually elaborate on it. And of course, deep down, he knew the same things that we did. He just couldn't say it. But it's because he was a partner and he didn't want to get kicked out of the partner program. He didn't want to tarnish his relationship with Mike. So at the end of the day, I get it, as much as it did kind of bother me at times. Now, when it comes to Bailey, I don't have a lot of experience with Bailey. I did buy a few things from him from his whatnot streams. But what I can say is the guy does a phenomenal job at doing what he does, right? There's a reason why he helped out Aoki on his Playhouse auctions and stuff like that, because this guy is a true salesman. He can sell anything to anybody. He can sell literally a ketchup popsicle to somebody with white gloves. As the saying goes, this guy can sell anything to anybody. He does a phenomenal job at pushing stuff. But at the same time, it's kind of like that used salesman mentality, right? These guys are usually kind of shady and they do sketchy things and they don't give a shit. They just want to get the sale. So a lot of times you can find yourself getting burned because they'll say he only has one of something or he's only going to sell one. And then he ends up selling multiple of that same item in the auction. And then you get pissed off because you spent all this money on the first one and he keeps selling them and the price keeps dropping each time because there's less and less people that want them. And you find yourself in those scenarios with him sometimes. And it's happened to me where I got kind of FOMO'd into buying something, thinking that he was going to list one, and then he lists more of them later on, and he kind of gets screwed. So he definitely would do some shady practices, but that's just ultimately being a good salesman. You can be mad at that or not. You know what I mean? It is what it is at the end of the day. So that was always my experience with both of these guys, right? Now, the thing about Bailey is, A lot of times when people would just not get things that they were supposed to get, like if you were a staff member and you didn't get a staff promo card, or you didn't get some kind of, pack that you were supposed to get from one of the events or something, for whatever reason, Bailey would always end up with these things, right? I mean, it's common knowledge now at this point in time that they would give this guy stacks and stacks of promo cards just for helping out at the event. And he could say that he deserved these things, whatever, you know what I mean? So that's something that never looked good for Bailey anyways, because he was just given special treatment that other people weren't given. But when he started attacking Argos over the situation, one thing I always thought was crazy was he claimed that Argos was closer to Mike than he was, which just doesn't make any sense because Bailey would work with Mike all the time, right? He lived next door to Mike. And if you went on to social media, which he ironically deleted at that point in time, you would have seen pictures of him eating, steak dinners with like Aoki and Mike and all these other guys, right? Like he constantly hung out with these guys. And you got Argos over here, barely attended any events. It was just a partner. You know what I mean? So who's closer to Mike? Obviously Bailey is. I mean, he literally got all his prototype Mothmen. Argos didn't get a thing. He didn't get a single thing. So it's like, how can you make that claim? You can't. So it was always kind of weird anyways, right? But the reason why I believe Bailey started attacking Argos to the extent that he was is he wanted to direct all attention away from himself because he knew that people thought he was already shady because he was given all this shit, right? And he didn't want to take any of this blame. So he's like, immediately when MetaZoo shut down, he's like, I'm going to start attacking Argos and making it look like he was doing this disgusting thing and inside trading and this, that, and the other, and just direct all attention away from myself because I know all the eyes are going to go on me now that MetaZoo's shutting down, right? And he makes it seem like he's the victim. I'm holding all these heavy bags, this, that, and the other. But the reality is, I mean, this guy made millions of dollars off of MetaZoo. Like, let's be real. Like, all those promo cards and everything he was given that he was pushing during its heyday for crazy amounts of money, this guy made bank off of MetaZoo, way more than Argos ever made. Like, I think that's clear to say, you know what I mean? It got to the point where this guy was sending in stacks and stacks of promo cards into PSA grading without even looking at them. That's why he gets a lot of these slabs back, and a lot of them were like 6s and 7s and stuff because they have damage, you know what I mean? They have literal print lines running through the middle of them. It's like a normal person that actually cares about what they're sending in, you know what I mean, that doesn't have unlimited funds, are going to look over all their cards before they submit them. But he just sends in stacks and stacks without even looking at them because he doesn't care. And now he's left with heavy bags, sure, but it's a bunch of slabs of shit he never should have graded in the first place, which I talked about in previous videos, you know what I mean? He's trying to push off all these junk slabs now. It's like, well, don't sit there and try to play the victim. I mean, the same thing that Rudy's doing now. I mean, he's sitting on all these boxes, but it's like, bro, we know that you hold a pallet of every box that you've ever sold. You've told us that. And I guarantee MetaZoo was paying you money. I mean, you say that they weren't. Either they're giving you product for promoting the game or they were paying you money. There's no way you're doing this for free. So it's like all those boxes that you're sitting on are already paid for. Like you didn't lose a dime off of that shit. And we know you made over $1 million in your Nightfall kit. You made millions of dollars in your 6.9 kit. And you made a lot of money in your other kits. Like you didn't lose money with MetaZoo. Like you made millions of dollars, and he's trying to play the victim, acting like he's just as bad off as everybody else because he's sitting on all these boxes, all these heavy bags. But it's like, bro, you're not sitting on shit. Like you made way more than you're claiming that you made. You know what I mean? You're not a victim. You're just playing victim to get away from the whole situation. You know what I mean? So you're not going to look like a scumball at the end of the day, but you are a scumball. You know what I mean? It's the same thing that fucking Bailey's doing here. He's acting like he's a victim because he's sitting on all these fucking cards. But it's like, bro, but we know you made way more than that. You know what I mean? During the 3 years that MetaZoo was alive, you made way more than that than you're losing out now. So it's just kind of this victim complex that they're playing, right? And I think that's all Bailey's trying to do. He's just trying to make himself look better when it comes to the community's eyes. And it's like, we're not stupid. The majority of us are not stupid. We see what you're doing, right? So he starts attacking Argos, saying all these crazy claims. But the reality is like, bro, you both knew that the game was shutting down. Ultimately, the writing was on the wall. We all knew it. Even us bystanders, we knew the game was shutting down. I mean, the signs were there. They weren't paying the people from the towers. They weren't paying, you know what I mean, the printers to get this shit sent to them. So all these pre-orders are not being sent out. I mean, all these different issues. We already knew that it wasn't looking good. So it wasn't really that much of a shocker that it shut down. We just didn't think it was going to shut down that fast. We thought they had at least another year to go, you know? So it wasn't a shocker that it shut down that fast, but it wasn't a shocker that it was going to shut down, that things weren't looking good. So, I mean, it's only smart that obviously you would start selling your stuff off. And I will agree they both did it. Argos, you know what I mean? He started selling his stuff. I remember I went to Discord and I said, yo, look at this guy dumping his collection on eBay. And I remember Argos, replied, and he's like, "'Tis but a scratch." At that time, I put 2 and 2 together to realize he was talking about himself because that was his eBay account. But I found out shortly later because somebody DM'd me and told me it was his. And when I mentioned it in the actual Discord, I remember Argos replied and said, "Well, everybody knows that's my eBay." And I said, "Well, I didn't." And then he went and he changed it that night. And I got to respect him for that. You know what I mean? The fact that he actually changed it, because you got to understand, you're the face, of MetaZoo, essentially, like the biggest face of promoting this game. And you can do what you want ultimately, but it just doesn't look good if you're running some kind of anonymous, or you know what I mean, which is kind of funny because his name is Argos Anonymous. But you can't be running this anonymous eBay store that's just dumping all these cards behind the scenes, and it ends up being you, but you're not using your actual name. Like, you should be out there using your name. And he agreed because he changed it, and it's a little scummy that he didn't do it beforehand, but the fact is he changed it that night, and I got to respect him for that. But then we went on from that conversation. And I remember at the time, he was coming up with all these reasons of why he was doing it, right? He's like, well, I always do this during the same time every single year. I sell off cards. And then he's like, I'm opening up this candy store and I need money for that as well. And it's like, he was throwing out all these BS reasons of why he was selling. And it's like, yeah, I get that. You know what I mean? But you make over 7 figures every year. Like, you really don't need this money. You can open up that shop without selling a damn thing. Like, let's be real. Obviously, it's nice to have that extra income, but in the extra space and stuff, like, you really don't need to do that, And it might be true that you sell stuff off, but not the stuff that you're selling, right? He kept focusing on all the bulk stuff, all the extra booster boxes he was selling, and the multiple iterations of Mothman that he had. But what I knew was kind of strange was the fact that he posted his PSA 10 Revive Mothman at the time, when he literally told me the night before that he only had 1 copy of it. At that time, I knew there was something wrong. And every time I kept bringing that up, he just ignored it and just kept focusing on the other stuff. And most of the people in the Discord were eating it up and were believing everything he was saying. There was a couple of us that were very wary and were like, no, this isn't right. There's something up here. Like, he knows something that we don't know, and he's trying to get out. And ultimately, you can't blame the guy. Like, I get it, but he should have went out there and just been open about it. He should have said, you know what, I don't really believe in this company anymore, so I'm going to sell off some of my stuff. He should have been more open about it, and he wasn't. And that's the only thing you can really blame Argos off. He just wasn't as open as he should have been, right? Ultimately. Now, when it comes to Bailey's the more disgusting of the two, in my personal opinion, because he started taking shots. He didn't want to take any of the blame. He wanted everyone to focus on Argos. So he came up with all these weird excuses and all this bullshitistry that he was coming up with that just wasn't true. And ultimately, this makes you look like an actual scumbag, man, in my personal opinion. And the same thing goes for him. He was selling stuff too. He likes to act like he wasn't, but he was. Because I remember I actually bought the fucking Michael Waddell business card that he was pushing off on me, right? He was selling a lot of his grails early on, towards like the end of last year and early this year. He was selling a lot of his grails. And I remember I didn't put 2 and 2 together at the time. Why was he doing this? But he was trying to piece out a lot of cards here and there. You know what I mean? And he still had high ticket prices on him, but he was trying to push them off. I remember he kept showing them off in his Whatnot streams, where previously he never would have done that, right? He was just trying to collect stuff. He wasn't selling that high-end stuff. It was just kind of weird that he was doing it. Yes, I will agree, when the shit hit the fan, he actually stopped selling on Whatnot for like a month straight. I will agree he did do that, but I think that was just for publicity's sake, because at the end of the day, he kept mentioning that he did that. And it's like, yeah, you did that, but you were pushing stuff before then. You were trying to sell off a lot of your stuff before then. So you both knew that the shit was going to hit the fan. You both were quote unquote inside trading. At the end of the day, you both take some of the blame here, but I definitely think Bailey takes a bigger portion of the blame because of the disgusting stuff that he's been doing and continues to do. You know what I mean? And then him attacking Argos and saying all that crazy stuff, that pushes it over the line. You know what I mean? Because he was saying some crazy things that just are not true. Ultimately, it's like, what are you doing, bro? It just doesn't look good. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, we have to go after these guys because they were doing this. It's like, I don't really care, because we all saw the signs. And sometimes, you know what I mean? Yeah, we look up to these people and they should have been more upfront about it, but you got to make your own decisions at the end of the day. And the signs were there. It's not like we had no idea that the company was looking shit. We all saw it. It's different if we didn't see these things and the company was running fine and this goes down and they had some kind of inside information that was going to go down, but they didn't. They had the same information we had, maybe a little bit more, but not much more. So that's kind of my personal opinion on it. And I know a lot of misinformation is going around. Like I said, people are picking sides, but ultimately, I definitely think Bailey comes out of this looking a lot worse, than Argos does. I still have respect for Argos. I lost basically all respect for Bailey after this whole situation. But yeah, guys, sometimes you just have to keep your mouth shut and just accept reality. You know what I mean? And if you're holding bags, you're holding bags. Don't sit there and try to play victim, because people that are paying attention are going to call you out on that shit.